All right, this is a Delial versus Stuff. Deli has first turn, all normal rules in effect, level 10. Some new cards here. We see 874A on Stuff side, and we see 5A58 and 8992 on Deli's. All right, Deli has first turn. Stuff has a relative slightly worse going up than other directions, it looks like, but a pretty balanced hand. Like going to the right, there's A987. Going down, there's A99. Going left, there's A766. Okay. And going up, there's 988. So relative balance. Definitely prefers going down right to up left, but not by a lot. Deli's hand, on the other hand, does not want to really be going up left. Sort of similar in that the hands, you do a quick skim of them and it's not, you know, massively favored towards down right, but Deli a little more so. They both have 2 cards for 1. Yeah. So you could see them both trying to angle the game in the same direction. Now, how to create challenges for each other. Deli does not have many natural corners that seem to do much. One move that comes to mind is A8, 7, 4, and 7. Just because Stuff's only capture, 874A, can potentially be comboed back by 5A, 5-8. So I could see that having some play. But you just sort of start looking at Deli's corners and you go 4, 6, 8A. Oh, that concedes the same wall. 6, 8, 8, 6. Another same wall. 8, 9, 9, 2. Plus walls both ways, right? So one thing you could do is you could say, okay, I have 6, 8, 8, 6. We both have double numbers facing down right, but I'm the only one with double numbers facing up left. Maybe you play with an A out from 1. So something like 5A, 5-8, but it's really not the direction you want to be playing in. So I would start by trying to make A8, 7, 4 work. Can they set up to handle the A? They could play 6, 8, 9, 5, and 1. They could play 8, 7, 4A and 1. But then they give up their threat in 8, so we just block 4 and we're happy. I can do math. They could play 8A, 2, 7, and 5. They could play 8, 7, 4A, and 5, but that gives up 8. Yeah, that gives up 8. So, okay. 6, 8, 9, 5, and 1 seems reasonable, but it doesn't solve the problem that 5, 8, 5A is the potential combo. So maybe I can still just play 4 there and not be too fussed. My cards are really bad for the resulting game, though. I think even though structurally it's pretty pleasant, it's not... I don't think it would be pleasant to play. I think your remaining cards are really uncomfortable. I'd probably just chuck something on the right here. 4, 6, 8, A9 or something. I know they have the capture too. No, he goes for it. Okay, that's fun. All right. I'm glad he went for it because I think it's the most interesting move. I was just getting nervous about it and wanted to bail. By no means am I sure 468A was the right card to put in 9 if you were going to bail. The solver, by the way, will prefer this move because the solver kind of universally on early moves prefers what you might call higher pressure moves, but I would call like more forcing moves, right? Moves that define the action. The solver will say there are more losing moves against, and there will be more losing moves against. That's true. But it's also one of those things of like, if I throw a punch and your decisions are like stand still, move forward, or move to the left or right, like if you move forward or stand still, my punch is hitting you. Maybe with less force if you move forward, but say it hits you both ways. If you move to the left or right, it doesn't hit you. If I wait and see what you do, all 4 of your options might be viable, but they might be more dangerous in the long run, kind of thing. I don't know why this was the analogy that came to mind. But my point is, the solver likes forcing action because more things are losing now. One example of this is defensive side starters. So imagine a starter in 2 where you have a safe recapture in 1 or 3. The solver will say almost anything ties against it. But let's say they go 1 and you go 3, and the solver says, oh, suddenly they only have 2 ties. It sort of defers the pressure, right? There's still high pressure. They only have 2 ties on move 4. That might be a tough spot. It might be easy. That might be obvious moves. But it might be a tough spot because you didn't force the action turn 1. You didn't make immediate threats, but you are starting to build up and make threats after turn 3. And I sort of feel this way about strong and weak corners. But anyways, I'm happy to see this because I'm curious how stuff replies. My instinct would be 6, 8, 9, 5, and 1, I guess, without having done too much careful thinking. But stuff doesn't really want the game to be up left either. It's sort of going to be uncomfortable for both. It will be easy for them both to have high numbers sticking out, and harder for both of them to take things. There's also moves like, I don't know about this specifically, but like 5, 9, 9, 6, and 3. Just saying, okay, you created a challenge for me. I can create a challenge for you. You don't have a capture in 6. I do have a recapture. It's really not a card I want to spend recapturing because I kind of think 874A is the best card in the game. Which actually supports my recent video on stuff saying A874s are really good in randoms. But it is supported by that. They don't have a capture that we do. And if they take it, we have play against many of their captures, right? 5A, 5, 8, and 2, we combo. Okay, that's about it. But we could have play against other stuff, like 8, 9, 9, 2. Okay, he goes for 5, 9, 9, 6. Not 6, 8, 9, 5, which for some reason was more intuitive for me. Not actually sure why. I think I just wanted to use the weaker card first. I guess this one, 6895, is a recapturer in 4, but I don't think you're ever going to get to play 4, so I'm not sure this matters in actuality, but might be technically an improvement on my thought here. I was assuming Delial would play 5A, 5-8 in 4 here. I think that's the kind of... No, you need to keep that card, sorry. Right, because that's your combo card. Okay, so let's pretend I wasn't assuming that. We all agree that was not in the video. I never assumed that. Instead, maybe 8, 9, 9, 2, and 4 is the default move then. It keeps you with 6886, which I want to have, so that if 874A lands in 5, we have a plus wall in 2. I'm not sure we can actually take it, because they have 8827 landing at some point in 6, but I want it to be in the air. Because 8992 and 4, they don't have... it takes calculation to prove that they have 5 or 8. Both of them are dangerous. And if they go 2, they don't have like a big setup. So that seems like a plausible move. What else is worth considering? Given that you don't have 4, I think you just want to get rid of 4. Like, I don't love the look of 3 or 9. Because, I mean, first of all, you don't want 9 blocked. 9 is your combo square, not theirs. But say you go 3, I don't want them to go 2. And suddenly we have to play 4, locking in their card for them kind of thing. Like, we're going to have an unpleasant move in 4, and I would rather get my unpleasant move out of the way earlier, and especially because it does pose challenges to the opponent. So my instinct is 8, 9, 9, 2, and 2. I'm sure there's many ways to handle it. Deli's probably checking 5, which is not to my taste. Yeah, I don't think there's a way to make 5 work here. The thing drawing me to at least consider 5 was just because 5996 has such high numbers facing out that stuff has trouble going next to it safely. See, sometimes you can, when you see a lot of high numbers facing out, sometimes you can exploit that with diagonal moves. With low numbers facing out, diagonal, or even mid numbers, diagonal moves lose a lot of value. One of the reasons I don't like 5 replies to corner starters is a lot of corner starters aren't big numbers. And against medium numbers, just the upside of playing diagonally is so much lower that I don't like. 5 does so little to determine the direction of the game and gives the opponent so much room to set up against you that I consider it somewhat high risk. And if you're going to take those risks, you should have a lot of combo potential. And the lower numbers that are facing out, the less that combo potential means. Here, I saw high numbers facing out, so I thought 5. Deli's going to consider 5. I don't think 5 makes sense here. Deli has picked up 8992. He has played it in 4. Deli playing this game, I think, very reasonably. And now Stuff has a problem to solve. Which is not to say he's like worse or in any real trouble. I think this is a pretty normal position. But it's a pretty normal position where you have to make like one more good decision and then you're home free. Or like you're at the point where calculation can take you home. But, and I don't want to criticize here too much. Stuff has been losing a bunch of positions from these lines, these kinds of positions. And what seems to be happening in them, as best I can tell, is he makes a very normal looking move among the options. And then the solver says that was the only one that was losing. Or one of very few. And so he's reaching good positions and he's finding the right squares. But on these kind of pivot moments of the game around move 4 to 5, he's sometimes just not finding quite the right way to do it. But, and I think this is the kind of tricky position where, like, if you make the right move here, or like one of, say, a couple right moves here, then like you just look at the game as like, this was very straightforward and I tied easily. And if you play the wrong move here, everything goes wrong and suddenly you're like, that was really dangerous. I'm not sure why it was so dangerous. I'm also reminded of, there was a game Seto played against someone. I don't remember who, but I spent the whole time going like, this is a trivial tie. And then Seto was just like winning for like half the time I thought it was a trivial tie. Or like it required real precision to save. And my analysis was just absolutely terrible, but I was really misevaluating the pressure of a position vaguely like this. And I actually just like gave the game continuation. I was just like, here, and then a tie at the end. And no, it was just losing at the end. What was I doing? So my point is just like, I'm talking instead of like taking care on the position. So whatever my instinct is here, I'm not going to particularly trust. My guess is there are a bunch of ties here, but the ties and losses look similar. And that can be a real problem. There are positions where, like, you know, say there are cards in 2 and 4. And maybe there are other cards on the board, but the point is there are cards in 2 and 4. And there's just a safe spot in 1. There are positions where every move in 1 ties, every move not in 1 loses. And that might have fewer ties than another position, but as long as you find 1, you have held the tie. And 1 is pretty straightforward to find. And then there are other positions where, like, say this position, maybe say there's 1 tie in 2, 1 tie in 5, and 1 tie in 8. Okay, the tie in 5 or 8 has a good chance to be 8-7-4A, so maybe this isn't so hard. But if I told you here there was 1 tie in 2, it might be really hard to identify which was the tying card in 2 and which cards were losing. Like, I think you want to hold on to 8-7-4A, you don't have the recap on 8-8-2-7, you don't really have the recap on 9-4-A-6, so, but you don't have the recap on 6-8-9-5 either. So either any card you put there is kind of clumsy, and you tell me one of them ties and the others lose, I don't know which it is. I'm not saying that's the case, I'm just saying if you told me. Like, all 4 of those cards, 3 of them you do not have the recapture in one direction, and the only card you have recaptures in both directions is the card I most want to hold on to for the rest of the game. So, and maybe Stuff is about to play Chrono in 2. Maybe he's about to play something distant because it turns out 2 is really unpleasant, which I only realize now as I started to look at it. But if you told me one of those moves ties in 5 and the others don't, Like, it's just really hard to separate out those moves without doing a lot of calculation. And so that could be a position where there's more ties, maybe two of those four tie, but it would still be really hard to identify which two. And if 50% of the time you find a tie and 50% of the time you lose, then this is an incredibly dangerous position at the top level. Okay, he does play 8-7 4A and 2, but this gives up all threats on Deli's cards. So Deli now has a free hand to do whatever he wants, including potentially take the combo with 5-8-5A, which looks quite appealing. You'll notice Stuff has a combo back with 9-4-A-6, but Deli then has a same in 5 with 4-6-8-A, and that's just game over if so. So Stuff would have to find a way to create a second threat. And that seems difficult to do. Because if you create a second threat but don't block 5, as long as they leave 5 open, they can respond to your threat in 6. And if you do block 5, they go 6, and you can't have made a threat in 8. So 5A, 5-8, and 3 looks really, really tempting. But it's not the only thing Deli can do, because another move that has a lot of appeal is 6-8-8-6 and 6. Because that sets up the same in 5 for Deli already. Now, I would be hesitant to make this move. Like, it may be correct. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I haven't done the calculation. But the dangerous thing to me is it gives up a same wall in 9, which would not be that bad, except that our potential combo in 3 is weak to 6 and overpowers 2. So it would be easy to imagine you go 6-8-8-6 and 6, Stuff goes 5, and suddenly you can't take the combo in 3 because you're murdered by 8. Now, maybe it all works out because maybe Stuff can't play 5 without flipping 6, which makes your combo safe. But he can play 5 without flipping 6. He can go Chrono. So then that walks into other combos back. So that's very complicated. It might work, but it would take a lot of calculation to justify. So if I was playing this game, I would start with 5A, 5-8, and 3 because I think that's a way easier follow-up to calculate. All right, here's another move. What about 4-6-8-A and 8? This is another just ridiculous move to calculate because it gives up the same wall to Chrono, but it also gives 5-8-5 as well as 3. And if so, like, say you go 8 and they take the same wall in 9, and then you go 6-8-8-6 in 6, I think you just win because 5-8-5-8 has the ball game. So my point is there's a lot of moves to calculate and they all look very, very strong. And I bet at least one of them is winning, but I cannot tell you which one. It's even possible there are more normal low risk moves, but Chris in 8, 4-6-8-A, I think her name's Chris. I've only played like 20 minutes of Suikoden 3. No, I played a couple hours, but I don't remember it at all. It didn't click for me. I think the Suikoden games are not for me. I did for some reason play all of Suikoden 4, and I just hadn't played an RPG in a while, so I was just so happy to be playing an RPG, and I knew it was like terrible, and I really didn't like it. But I was also really enjoying it. That happens occasionally, where like you're just really in the mood for some type of thing. It needs to be a new version of it, and any version of it will do. So I remember it like very happily of like, oh, that was a bad scene with bad writing. Oh, do, I'm having fun. You know, that kind of thing. Um, yeah. I could also imagine. So Deli is a player that really likes to check a lot of things. Though, actually, when I was talking to him recently, he does stay on moves longer and go more in depth than I thought. He just really explores things from sort of more angles, even if he's staying on one idea. And there's just so many appealing ideas here. So my way of thinking is try to get 5-8-A-5, 5-8-A-8 to work. 5-8-5-A-5-8 to work in 3. And I think that move probably works. So hopefully I would not have to calculate there anymore because it would have worked and I could stop thinking. That's the ideal, right? Is you like find some move like that and then you can stop thinking. But there's a lot to explore. He goes for 5. I did not consider this at all. I thought there was so much latent potential in the position that you had to go for the combo play. But he is up 6-4. So for instance, if Godot 8A 2-7 and 3, then Chris in 6 just wins. You go up 6-4 and 5-8 Ryuji sweeps the bottom. So maybe this just works and I just should have like considered the basics. Because this is a much easier move to calculate. Deli's being much more practical than me if this works. I actually think 6-8-9-5 in 3 might be an interesting defense. Because if you try the Chris and 6 idea, I now have Godot to same wall you, and I'm doing fine. And if you play Ryuji in 6, I can just take it, and it's 5-5, and I tie. And if you go in 8 with Ryuji, I can play Chris in 6, Chrono in 6, and I tie. And if you go in 8 with Chris, my idea was to same wall. That flips a lot of stuff. You combo back. Ooh, I think I lose on the combo back if I go Chrono in 9. But I can play Godot in 9 and just capture Chris and 5A, 5-8 blanks, Ryuji blanks. And if you go 9, if you go Chris in 9, then I can play Chrono 6, flipping 5, and you can't flip that back. And if you go Ryuji 9, I can play in 6 again. So okay, 6-8-9-5 and 3 is a tie. Unless I'm really missing something. Which means my guess is Deli missed a win. But I could very easily be wrong. If Godot in 8 here, Godot in 8 is another move you'd check, then Chris in 3 is good for the win. So this is definitely dangerous for stuff, but I'm pretty sure 6-8-9-5 and 3 ties. I'm really curious if there were other moves that were winning. As I said, I think like if there wasn't a win, then this is a very practical option. It poses stuff a real problem. If I'm right about the tie, and I could be wrong, you know, my calculations recently are not all one might wish them to be. Okay, he's picked up a different card, so maybe there were multiple ties. So Deli has 8-8-7 for this game, 8-9-9-2, 6-8-8-6, 4-6-8-A, and 5-A-5-8, the new reverse Kamari, I guess. And stuff at 5-9-9-6, 8-7-4-A, 6-8-9-5, 9-4-A-6, and he has picked up what card? 8-A-2-7. Ooh, that better not be going in 8. Okay. So Deli goes in 7, which I think the solver will like because it's high pressure. Solver loves it. Yeah, solver likes Deli's play. Alright, good move. Yeah, only 8 ties against it. So I wanted a 6-8-9-5 and 1, which does tie. Stuff played 5-9-9-6 and 1, which the solver thinks is a little worse, but also a tie. Very similar. Both tying ideas. Alright. Incidentally, always the question, did capturing tie or lose? Capturing lost. Okay, always a good question. Okay, so Deli plays in 4, and the solver says stuff has 5 ties. So as we said, he plays Chrono in 8. I didn't check this. It keeps up Godot to combo against 4-8-6. But now what about Ryuji in 9? Ryuji in 9 should win, because you have combos against both cards in 6. And, well, Stuff is a capture in 3. Deli captures a lot back, so yeah. So Stuff didn't find the tie here. All right. And I might have been wrong. We'll see soon if I'm just wrong about there being a tie. So, okay, there were 5 ties here. And I was saying, I thought this was tricky. Were there any ties in 2? A, it's exactly what I said. There was 1 tie in 2. There was a tie in 3. There were actually 2 ties in 8. So 8A7-4 in either 5 or 8 tied on move 4, which were the only 2 moves you'd consider there, and they both were tricky to calculate out, but they both did tie. So that would have been a path, but there was only 1 tie in 2. And the only tie in 2 was 6895. Yeah, as I said, I think this was... Yeah, it was exactly what I asked, so I wonder if you answered. Did you get it right? If you were thinking there's 1 tie in 2, which is it? Did you pick 6895, giving Deli a plus in 5 with 6886? That's a hard call. Like, this was a tricky position. Really dangerous. So 874A loses. But it only loses to 1 move. So the question is, does it lose to 5A, 5, 8, and 3? Does it lose to what Deli played? Does it lose to 6, 8, 8, 6, and 6? Or does it lose to Chris and 8? I haven't looked yet, so we'll let the game finish. Yeah, Stuff gives him the combo at the end. Nice win by Deli. Though I think he probably missed a win. Yeah, so this move was not winning because of my idea 6, 8, 9, 5, and 3, which was the only tie. So yeah, I did find the tie here. So that's the first encouraging sign for my play in, a couple months. Oh dear. But that was a tie. Did calculate that correctly and did have the right instincts to check it. I wanted to keep 8A27 in the hand, and I wanted to keep 9-4A6 because I noticed everything things that were pointing out from the middle row to the right were often really vulnerable to 9-4A6, so it had the chance to combo lots of stuff by landing on the right side. And 8A27 was covering a lot of stuff, so I wanted to use 6-8-9-5. 3 was the most plausible square, also leaving open squares I could do a little more with. Anyway, so okay. So Deli's move, there was 1 tie against it. What about my crazy move? Let's switch over to the solver view. 1 sec. How do we do this? Solver. That's not right. Okay. We will resize this live. I've switched computers from my normal computer, and that means most things did port over well, but some of the settings went whack. Yeah, so this is now way too big. So almost looks good. That good? I should put something in the top right. Be fun to have a visual in the top right. All right. So okay, something like this. Did I give it away? No, this is the example from the last one. Okay. So Chris in 8 was my idea. One of my ideas. I think my best idea is this. This is what I'm thinking the actual win was. That looked like a win to me. But Chris in 8, my point was, if you take the combo, I can go here, and I'm pretty sure 5A, 5-8 sweeps the endgame. Because anywhere you go in 5, my combo goes through 2 to 3 to 6 through 5 and flips enough to win. And if you don't go 5, then because I'm flipping 2 and 8, I'm flipping enough extra cards to win. Now, I didn't check anything else. Is this a tie? Is this a win? You can just block 5, and you tie. Because even though I flip a few extra cards, your last card is dead. Okay, so Chris didn't win. How many ties were there? There were 4 ties. All right, that idea, not so good. My second creative idea was, or my next creative idea that I don't think will work was 6, 8, 8, 6, and 6. Incidentally, because there were so many creative options, it's harder to find the win. If there's only one good option, it's a lot easier. If there's a lot of good options, it's a lot harder when there's only one move. Like, if someone says, which door do you go through, and there are 6 doors, or which door do you go through and there's 1 door, you're going to pick the 1 door more often when there's just 1 door. Okay. So there's some optimization that could exist in Triple Triad of like, you're in trouble and you intentionally, and you think you're lost, and you intentionally make a move where they have lots of good ideas against it instead of a move that they only have one good idea, that could genuinely be a useful strategy for surviving bad positions. Like, theoretically, it makes complete sense. Anyways, the reason I didn't like this one was because I was worried about the same wall. Not them taking it immediately, but something like if they occupy 5, let's do it with this card. You can't, I was thinking you can't take the combo because I hit you back, though here you hit me back. So, but actually in this one, I hit you back like this. So maybe you don't put that card there. Maybe you do something like this. And then my idea is this does work. So I was thinking there could be some problem like that. There is a tie, and it is going in 5, but it's actually 6, 8, 9, 5. All right, because this... Is this what I just said? No, this is what I avoided because I didn't want that, but I totally missed that this was also a combo. Okay, so 6, 8, 9, 5 makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So there was one tie there. So my final idea and my best idea, and I'm hoping this one was right, was just to take the combo, and it is winning. Yeah. With the point that this is just samed. Yeah. Okay. But there were a lot of really appealing options that were close to winning. And Deli's was very close, and in practice did win, though there was this saving move. And again, there was only one tie here, and it was this. I think that's actually pretty difficult to find. And you might say, well, that looks totally normal. And it does in a way, but it gives up a plus that seems unnecessary to give up. You have no recapture from 5 yourself. Differentiating between these 4 cards, I think which one goes in 2, really difficult. Really difficult. And like, not necessarily easy to save this position either. Just one tie. You have to have seen 2 in advance from here. I think it's a lot easier to see 2 in this position than to see, I'm going to sack this and then play 2. That seems very difficult to see at distance. So I think that one's practically not going to be played. It gave an option in 3. We're going to ignore that. I think this was the most practical option, actually. I think this was the most humanly findable. Because my first thought was this is well covered, but I really like having this in the air. And I like having this as an option as well. There's a bunch of things that sort of appeal about this position. And even if your stuff can get taken, you can sneak some wins in some variations. So like, I think here we're actually winning. Yeah, we're outright winning. With either taking 8 or 3 immediately. Yeah. Now, maybe you have some way to set up, but this is actually an annoying numbers for you to set up against. Like, you could imagine something like this, but that gives up the threat in 2. So I think humanly, this was the one that made the most sense. Once you realize 2 is not that scary, then this position looks not so bad. Because I think it was very hard to find a good move in 2. And I think very, very hard to find this line in 8. And there's no way you find this line and don't just find this line instead. So I think 8 doesn't make sense. There's one game in the record books of Seto doing something like this, but basically no one else has done this, where they just like have a bad position, just sack some part of the board to play a move they could have already made somewhere else, and it's like correct. Like, this is in Seto's range, but I don't think anyone else's. Maybe, I mean, everything's in Deli's range. Deli can make any move you can imagine. He can also miss those moves, right? But this is kind of in their range and no one else's. But I think the human tie-in 2 is this, but it's just so hard to differentiate that from the other moves in 2. I think that's just very difficult. If you tell me a top player is going in 2 here, and you tell me only one card ties in 2, I think they're losing this game at least half the time. I think it's really hard to get that right. So I think this is the human move. As it was, he could have got away with it if he had found this, but this is a hard find, and at this point, there's a very good chance you think you're already lost, so you're not going move by move in a way Like, you could have been relying on, say, this to tie, and once you realize that doesn't, it could be that you're just not checking everywhere. That you could have thought like one of here or here ties. And if they don't, okay, there's probably not a tie. Or there's not a tie, and you don't do the thorough check. All right, nice win by Deli, though. I really liked how he did the opening. I think this was the right move in 7, and I had sort of backed off it. But the fact that he got so... I thought stuff should reply in 1, and the fact that Deli had so much pressure against 1 says this was a way higher pressure move than I thought. I think really good starter from Deli. You could see me getting nervous about it, but Deli is a more optimistic player, and he was confident of it clearly, and good move. I think the follow up in 4 was just the logical follow up. We definitely agreed on that move. And yeah, missed this shot, but this was enough to win anyway. All right, good game. This was a fun one, and the first time I think I've mostly evaluated pretty well in a while. My one evaluation I don't feel so good about is not trusting 7. So I'm really pleased to see that work, right? You really want, when you get something wrong, you want to be shown it's wrong. Otherwise, you can't learn from it or pay more attention to it. And so Deli making the move in 7 that I got nervous about, really good for me to see because it confirms that I was overly pessimistic about a high pressure move. So yeah, good job to Delster. All right, good game. We'll call it a day. Cheers.